Welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today we are going to be finishing up with the street names. So last week we left off at the P's, so we will be picking up with Q, and the only one we have for Q is Queen Street. So Queen Street, originally called Front Street in Vidal's survey of 1846, was later renamed Queen Street for Queen Victoria. And we have a lot of these streets that were named for the British monarchy. So we have Queen Street, King Street, Princess Crescent. All of those are sort of just generic names for the British monarchy. Now moving on into the R's, we have Ramsay Place. So it ran east to west between Blake Avenue and Great Northern Road and between McNabb and McDonald, and it no longer exists. Then we have Ramsay Street, and so it ran north to south, and it was north of Ross Road, and it no longer exists. Then we have Rankin Road, named for Arthur McKee Rankin, provincial land surveyor, mining engineer, and who opened the first mine in Bruce Mines. Reed Street, named for Dr. John Alexander Reed, who was the first doctor to set up permanent residence in the Sault. He came to the Sault in about 1860 with his wife Annie Marks, a daughter of a well-known Bruce Mines shopkeeper, Samuel Marks. His home and office at the corner of Brock and Albert was built around 1868. Retta Street, named for the wife of Marc Boulin, who owned the property. And now this next series of streets, they don't exist anymore. So we have Ridgeway Road. It ran east to west between Northgate Road and Nelson Street. No longer exists. Rosserson Street ran north-south, north of Ross Road, and it no longer exists. Rome Street, which was originally named Roma Street, and it was a dead-end street. It ran north to south off Cathcart, and it was one east of West Street. It no longer exists. And then finally we have Russell Street, which ran east to west, north of Second Line, and it no longer exists. Then we have Russ Ramsay Way, named for Russell Terry Ramsay, who was involved in local media for many years. Russ was also very involved in the sports community and was inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame in 2003. He was MPP for the Sault from 1977 to 1985, and we actually have our sports gallery named after him. So it is the Russ Ramsay Sports Gallery. Then moving on into the S's, we have Schreiber Street, named for Honorable Collingwood Schreiber, chief engineer, who directed the construction on the Sault Canal, which opened in 1895. And this was renamed James Street, and it was located one east of Huron. Then we have like second and third lines, etc. And those were all surveyed by Johnson and Salter in 1859. Selkirk Road, probably named for Thomas Douglas, the 5th Lord Selkirk, who was greatly involved with the Northwest Company, Hudson's Bay Company, and Red River Settlement. Then we have Shannon Road, possibly named for Father John Adams Shannon, who's from about 1895 to about 1936. Then we have Shepherd Street, named for Dr. Allen A. Shepherd, an early physician in the Sault who is credited with introducing organized hockey in 1900. There has been some confusion about the name, as there is often misspellings, but Shepherd is spelled with 2 P's. Then we have Shingwak Street, named for Chief Shingwak, Little Pine, of Garden River. He had a vision of a teaching wigwam where his people could learn the Ojibwe language, culture, and traditions while also learning English and learning how to live in the European world. He wanted his people to better learn how to integrate into this ever-changing European society while still retaining their history and their culture. And this has been distorted into the Shingwak residential schools, but it is being brought back and fulfilled by SKG, Shingwak Kinamig or Shingwak University, and many of the other different groups who are working together to bring back and fulfill Chief Shingwak's vision. Then we have Simpson Street, named for Weymouth Mackenzie Simpson, who came to the Sioux in 1849 with the Hudson's Bay Company. He became the Hudson's Bay Company factor in 1862. After Confederation, he became the first MP for Algoma. He has 3 streets named for him. Weymouth Street, Simpson Street, and Upton Road. So Upton Road is actually named after his house, and his house is just off of that on Kensington, and it's a designated heritage property. Then we have Spring Street, so named because of the artisan wells and many springs in the area. Then we have Spruce Avenue, which was renamed Kent Street, and it ran east to west between Northern Avenue and Maru Avenue. St. Basil's Drive, named for the religious saint. St. Clair Street, renamed Spruce Street. It ran north to south between Wilson Street and North Street. St. George's Avenue, named for the religious saint. St. Mary's River Drive, named for the St. Mary's River that the road follows along the boardwalk. St. Patrick Street, renamed Patrick Street, but this was also named for St. Patrick, and it ran north to south between McGill and Sherbourne. Then we have St. Thomas Street, and this ran east to west off of Pym Street, just below the old stone house, and it no longer exists. Superior Avenue, it ran north to south between McDonald and McNabb, and it was 1 east of Poplar, and it no longer exists. Then we have Superior Street, named after the lake, but in 1912 the name was changed to Queen Street West, and it ran from Gore Street to West Street. Then we have Talon Avenue, named for Jean Talon, Canada's first official statesman. Then we have Talon Street, named for Jean Talon, the first intendant of New France, and this no longer exists. So we only have Talon Avenue that remains. Then we have Tancred Street, named for Benjamin Disraeli's work Tancred. He wrote a 2-volume text in 1846 on the attitude of people towards the Jewish people. The work is called Tancred, and you can find it online to read for free. Then we have Terry Fox Place, named for Terry Fox, who attempted to run across Canada but had to quit due to his cancer progressing. Then we have Thompson Street, renamed Beverly Street, and it was 1 west of Huron. Thornlow Crescent, named for George Thornlow, who was appointed Bishop of the Anglican Church in 1896. He succeeded Bishop Fouquier and Bishop Edward Sullivan, and he was the first Archbishop of Algoma. Tilley Road, named for Captain William Tilley, one of the earliest settlers in the Terrantors Township. Tower Street, named for T.P. Towers, who was in the registry office, connected with Colonel Wolseley's troops who went to quell the Red River Resistance. Town Line, which was surveyed by Johnson and Salter in 1859. Trelawn Avenue, named for James Bennett, a clerk of the Sioux's First Court. He died in his home, Trelawn, which later referred to in Cap's Annals of Sault Ste. Marie, written in 1907, as standing, quote, broken and shorn of its former beauty below the Bruce Street Hill. Trunk Road, it was part of the Sault Ste. Marie North Bay Link, and it was surveyed in 1908 and completed in 1912. Tuck Street, renamed Manor Road, it ran east to west, and it was one west of Pine Street. Turner Avenue, named for William Turner, who came to the Sioux in 1863 as the first school teacher paid by the town. Later, he ran a general store in the Turner block. It was built in 1908 at a cost of $5,000. Then we have Upton Road, named for Weymouth Mackenzie's Simpson home, Upton House, which still stands on Kensington Terrace, and it is actually just off of Upton Road. Then we have Valhalla Place. In Scandinavian folklore, it means heaven. Then we have Vandale Street, named for the Johans Vandale family who lived in the area and owned a large amount of property. Venn Street, named for Colonel Percy Venn, who developed the shooting ranges in Cora and was commander of the 49th Field Regiment. Warwick Road, it ran east to west off of Lake Street. Water Street, this was the original name of Bay Street due to the fact that it ran along the water or river. Then we have Wawanosh Avenue, named for the Wawanosh Residential School for Girls, which was located on Great Northern Road where the Legion stands today. There is a monument at the corner of the property. And also Wawanosh in Ojibwe means caribou. Wayne Court, this was named as part of the subdivision development carried out by J.B. Chambers, who named the streets in the area for family members. Then we have Weldon Avenue, named for Charles O. Weldon, treasurer of Steelton in the early 1900s. Then we have Wellington Street, named for the Duke of Wellington. It was established via Vidal's survey in 1846. Weymouth Street, named for Weymouth Mackenzie Simpson. Then we have West Street, and West Street was meant to be the western limit of the settlement, with East Street being the eastern limit, and it was named by Vidal in his survey of 1846. West Terrace, it was renamed Prentice Avenue. Wiggle Street, named for Ruby M. Wiggle, who was one of the first women lawyers in Sault Ste. Marie. She came to the Sioux in 1933 and established her practice in the Imperial Bank building before moving the business to her home on McDougall Street. Then we have Wilcox Avenue, named for Thomas J. Wilcox, who was a member of a real estate and insurance firm in Sault Ste. Marie around 1913, Wilcox and Party. He came to the Sioux at the turn of the century. Wild Avenue, named for John A. Wild, chief engineer at Algoma Central and Hudson's Bay Railway. It ran east to west, south of Wallace Terrace and north of Algoma Steel, and it no longer exists. Willoughby Street, named for Jacob Willoughby, one of the early settling families in the Terrantoris Township. Wilson Street, named for a Major Joseph Wilson, who came to the Sioux in 1843 as the customs officer, replacing his father, George Wilson. He was appointed the first postmaster by royal proclamation of Queen Victoria in 1846. So this was more so a military position. So he was doing it as part of his military assignment. So the first first civilian post officer wasn't until David Pym. But in 1849, Joseph Wilson attempted to establish a permanent rifle company. He was a very active man who did considerable doctoring with his chest of medicines and eventually became a virtual patriarch of the town. He fired a cannon salute every 24th of May in honor of Queen Victoria's birthday. Wilton Crescent became St. Andrew's Terrace. Windsor Street, it ran east to west, north of Second Line, and it no longer exists. Winston Avenue ran north to south, one east of Lake Street, and it no longer exists. And finally, we have Wyman Place, and it ran east to west between Fauquier and Gladstone, and it no longer exists. So that's all these street names that we have for you. If you have any more histories about these streets, how they got their names, anything like that, please feel free to email me, nicole@zoumuseum.ca. And we will be back next week for some other interesting stories. So stay tuned as always, and thanks for listening. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, you might like our blog too. Head over to our website, SaultMuseum, that's SAULT museum.ca, and look under Discover. You will find our blog, Museum Musings. We share short synopsis of influential people, historic places, and impactful events in our history. Pictures are always included, and you will be sure to learn a little something new with each post.
Today's quote is taken from Sault Ste. Marie, City by the Rapids, An Illustrated History by Frances M. Heath. The quote is by Anna Jameson from her book Winter Studies and Summer Rambles. Quote, "On the American side, there is a settlement of whites, as well as a large village of Chippewas. There is also a mission, I believe of the Methodists, for the conversion of the Indians. The fort, which has been lately strengthened, is merely a strong and high enclosure, surrounded with pickets of cedar wood. Within the stockade are the barracks and the principal trading store. The village is increasing into a town, and the commercial advantage of its situation must rise in ere long to a place of importance. On the Canadian side, we have not even those demonstrations of power or prosperity. Nearly opposite to the American fort is a small fort belonging to the Northwest Fur Company. Below this, a few miserable log huts occupied by some French Canadians and voyageurs in the service of the company. A set of lawless mauvais sujets from all I can learn. Lower down stands the house of Mr. and Mrs. McMurray, with the Chippewa village under their care and tuition. A lofty eminence, partly clothed with forest, rises behind the house, on which stands the little missionary church and schoolhouse for the use of the Indian converts." End quote.